Hello and welcome back to On This Day in History. Today's video is going to be quite busy, so be sure to grab some snacks and some hydration before settling in for another fascinating video. April 12th, if you didn't already know, is the Cosmonautics Day in Russia. It was named as such a year after the first manned spaceflight, but more on this shortly. Internationally, 12th of April is also known as Yuri's Night, held every April 12th to commemorate milestones in space exploration, which we'll get into a little bit further in detail. April 12th is also Education and Sharing Day in the United States. This was established by the US Congress in honor of the Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who was a Jewish leader and advocate for children, and he spoke about the need and importance for each child to be given an education that would offer them the opportunities to succeed. On this day in 1204, troops of the Fourth Crusade entered Constantinople and began a sack of the city, temporarily dissolving the Byzantine Empire. The Fourth Crusade was a Latin Christian armed expedition. The stated intent of the expedition was to recapture the Muslim-controlled city of Jerusalem by first defeating the powerful Egyptian Ayyubid Sultanate, the strongest Muslim state of the time. Essentially, the Crusaders decided to carry out the sack of Constantinople in 1204 at the capital of the Greek Christian-controlled Byzantine Empire rather than Egypt as originally planned. Constantinople is the historic name for a municipality in Turkey called Fatih. On this day in 1822, during the Greek War of Independence, the Ottoman troops began a massacre of tens of thousands of Greeks on the island of Chios. Chios is the fifth largest of the Greek islands, situated in the North Aegean Sea. The island is separated from Turkey by the Chios Strait. Chios is notable for its exports of mastic gum, and its nickname is the Mastic Island. Mastic is a resin obtained from the mastic tree. It is also known as the tears of Chios, as it is produced in tear-like droplets. The Greek War of Independence was a successful war of independence by Greek revolutionaries against the Ottoman Empire between 1821 and 1829. The Greeks were assisted by the British Empire, France, and Russia, while the Ottomans were aided by their North African vassals, particularly the Eyalet of Egypt. The war led to the formation of Greece, and the revolution is celebrated by Greeks around the world as Independence Day on the 25th of March. Prior to the Chios massacre, Greeks from neighbouring islands had arrived on Chios and encouraged the Chiots, who are the native inhabitants of the island, to join their revolt. In response, the Ottoman troops landed on the island and killed thousands. The massacre of Christians provoked international outrage across the Western world and led to increasing support for the Greek cause worldwide. And here's an interesting fact. The gentleman pictured, Georgios Stravellakis, a survivor at the age of 5 of the massacre, was sold into slavery. Although he went through this terrible ordeal, he eventually became Prime Minister of Tunis from 1837 to 1873. Tunis is the capital of Tunisia. Jumping back to the reason for Cosmonautics Day in Russia and Yuri's Night, on this day in 1961, aboard Vostok 1, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin performed the first human spaceflight, completing one orbit of Earth in 108 minutes, making Yuri Gagarin the first person to ever enter outer space. Yuri Gagarin was a Soviet pilot and cosmonaut from a small village called Klushino in Smolensk Oblast, Western Russia. The Vostok space capsule was launched from Baikonur Cosmodrome in an area of Kazakhstan leased to Russia. The orbital spaceflight consisted of a single orbit around Earth, which skimmed the upper atmosphere at 169 kilometers or 91 nautical miles at its lowest point. As previously mentioned, the flight took 108 minutes from launch to landing. Gagarin parachuted to the ground separately from his capsule after ejecting at 7 kilometers or 23,000 feet. On this day in 1980, Samuel Doe took control of Liberia in a coup d'etat, overthrowing President William Tolbert and ending over 130 years of national democratic presidential succession. Liberia, if you are wondering, is a country in West Africa, bordering Sierra Leone and Guinea, as well as Côte d'Ivoire. Samuel Doe was a Liberian politician who served as the Liberian leader from 1980 to 1990, first as a military leader and later as a civilian. Whilst he was a master sergeant in the armed forces of Liberia, Doe staged a violent coup d'état in April 1980 that left him the de facto head of state. The main driving force for the coup was that President Talbot had become very authoritarian in recent years. After ruling Liberia for just over 10 years, Doe was subsequently murdered during the First Liberian Civil War. And finally, last but not least, on this day in 2014, a fire broke out in the hills near Valparaiso in Chile, eventually destroying at least 2,500 homes and leaving approximately 11,000 people homeless. An additional 6,000 people were evacuated from the city, which was placed on a red alert and declared a disaster zone. 15 people were confirmed killed and 10 suffered serious injuries. And that's it for today's episode. I know it's been quite a long one, but I hope you found it interesting. I know I certainly have. I'll see you again tomorrow for another video. Thanks very much for watching.